Once a steel town, Blue Hollow was now nothing but red dust and broken dreams. In a place everyone else had abandoned, Clara Monroe, a poor single mother, emptied her savings to buy a crumbling garage the whole town called a graveyard of scrap metal. But when the concrete cracked open, her flashlight swept across the gleaming curves of a 1963 Corvette Stingray, revealing the beginning of a treasure worth $150 million. A chance to rewrite her American dream. If you believe forgotten values can still come alive, follow along and subscribe to Humankind Stories. Blue Hollow was once the steel heart of the Midwest. A massive mill roared day and night, lighting the skies with the glow of molten iron. But when the furnaces went cold, silence took over. Shops along Main Street gathered dust. Diners sat empty, for lease signs dangled from cracked storefronts. People called Blue Hollow a Rust Belt ghost town, where glory lived only in memory. In that setting, Clara Monroe lived with her 10-year-old daughter, Evelyn. 30 years old, but weathered far beyond her age, Clara carried the weight of single motherhood alone. Her father had been a mechanic who passed down his love for cars when she was a girl. He died when Clara was 17, leaving behind a few rusty wrenches and an unfinished passion. She never went to college, but her grease-stained hands became her only true inheritance. Day after day, Clara worked in a rented garage, taking whatever jobs she could. Oil changes, brake fixes, patching tires. Customers often haggled, some bluntly sneering, "What does a woman know about fixing cars?" Clara swallowed her anger and kept tightening bolts because she needed every dollar to raise her daughter. Their rented house sat off a dusty road. On winter nights, Clara would press thin blankets against the doorframe to keep the draft out. Evelyn, her eyes bright as stars, often told her about science shows she watched on TV, about inventors, machines, and legendary garages in Detroit. "One day, Mom, your garage will be famous too," the girl said with innocent conviction. But reality hit hard. Their landlord, Mrs. Carter, knocked on the door coldly. "You still owe me last month's rent. If you can't pay soon, get ready to move out." The words froze Clara. She wasn't just afraid of losing shelter. She feared Evelyn would carry yet another scar of instability. The breaking point came one late afternoon. Clara spotted a faded flyer on the grocery store board. "Old garage for sale, $4,000, needs repairs." The address read Milner Road, a deserted stretch on the town's edge, once home to the Whitaker shop. Folks said Bernard Whitaker was eccentric, obsessed with classic cars, who died alone and left behind a ruined workshop. Locals called it a graveyard of scrap metal. Nobody cared, but for Clara, those words glowed like a spark in darkness. She scraped together her meager savings, haggling down to $3,700, her last money. Neighbors laughed openly when she took Evelyn to see the place. "Buying that junk pile? She's lost her mind." One old customer smirked. "Guess she thinks she's chasing the American dream." Clara stayed silent, though her chest tightened. They weren't entirely wrong. The roof sagged, tin sheets rusted through, doors crooked, weeds choking the lot. But when Evelyn clasped her hand, eyes shining, Clara knew she couldn't walk away. That night, Evelyn drew a picture in her notebook. A bright garage glowing with yellow lights. A sign above it reading, "Mom's Garage." Clara stared at it, her hand trembling as she brushed her daughter's hair. In a child's eyes, she was still a hero. However, the whole town saw only a foolish woman burying her last dime. Clara didn't realize that the moment of scorn would become the hinge of destiny. Because beneath those cracked concrete floors, a colossal secret was waiting. A hidden collection of classic cars worth $150 million. A discovery that could change not just her life, but the fate of Blue Hollow itself. In the first days at her new garage, Clara tried to convince herself this was a fresh start. But the truth was harsher. Inside were cracked walls, leaking tin panels, and the smell of damp wood. She set up her father's old workbench and hung a few wrenches on the wall, but the image only reminded her of the town's failures. Her first customer was a heavy-set, middle-aged man driving a beat-up pickup. He tossed the keys on the table with a smirk. Oil change. Cheap. A dump like this. Let's see if you can even do it. Clara worked silently, but the man shorted her on the bill when she finished. This time, she didn't swallow her pride. She met his eyes. I do better work than most around here. Next time, you'll pay in full. The man scowled, muttered under his breath, and left. Clara's hands trembled, but a small fire warmed her chest. At least she wasn't silent anymore. The storm grew. Harper, a real estate developer in the region, arrived at the garage. Dressed in a crisp suit, shoes polished to a shine, he looked out of place in the dusty shop. His lips curled. Why keep this wreck? I could turn it into a shopping center. You'd get enough money to live comfortably? Clara's reply was firm. I bought it to fix cars, not to sell. Harper chuckled, dropping his business card. Think it over before this place buries you. That evening, rain poured down. Clara noticed water seeping through the concrete floor near the old compressor. It trickled into a thin stream, bubbling from a hollow space beneath. Her pulse quickened. She pressed her ear down, catching a faint echo unlike solid cement. Evelyn noticed, too. The girl picked up a small piece of metal washed loose by the water. It bore a circular symbol, like part of a lock. Clara pocketed it quickly, unwilling to alarm her daughter, but her suspicion deepened. Days later, ridicule persisted. A group of teenagers in a pickup blasted country music, shouting, "Dreamer's Garage!" as they sped by, laughing. Mrs. Carter, the landlord, came again, knocking hard. You still owe rent. Who do you think you are trying to run a garage in this town? Her eyes were ice. Clara bent over a Chevy Impala, grease up to her elbows, as the sun sank orange behind the rusty doors. Her silhouette looked small, but her hands never stopped moving. That night, Harper returned, this time with a lawyer. If you won't sell, be ready for legal papers, he warned. Behind the cracked door, Evelyn overheard everything. Her wide eyes searched for reassurance. Clara pulled her close, whispering, "Don't be afraid. We'll be okay." Yet deep down, she felt cornered. Rain fell again. Water seeped deeper into the crack. Clara knelt, hammer in hand, tapping hard. The hollow echo drummed back. She thought of the metal piece Evelyn found, and the unease gave way to something else. Anticipation. All the ridicule, Harper's threats, the pounding rain, they pressed down like a weight. But hidden beneath, Clara began to sense something new. A fragile spark of hope, like light leaking through a door. She didn't yet know that this small detail would lead her into a journey that would transform not only her and Evelyn's lives, but the destiny of Blue Hollow itself. Late at night, the rain had just stopped. The garage was pitch dark, with only Clara's old flashlight trembling in her hand. She strolled to the crack in the concrete floor. Rainwater still pooled in blotchy streaks, seeping into the thin gap. She knelt and tapped lightly with a hammer. A hollow echo rose up, as if from a hidden space underground. The sound was so distinct this time that Clara's heart raced. On the workbench, the old tin box she had found while cleaning the office still sat open. Inside were a rusty keyring and a folded grease-stained paper. Clara had never paid attention to it before. Now, opening it, she realized it was a rough sketch of the old garage layout. In the corner of the page was a strange circular symbol identical to the marking on the metal piece Evelyn had picked up the day before. Her hands shook as she fit the two together, recognizing them as a clue. "Maybe my father once dreamed of finding a secret like this," Clara whispered, recalling the times he talked about hidden car vaults in auto magazines. That night, Evelyn crept down, clutching the hem of her mother's shirt. "What are you doing, Mom?" Clara forced a smile and patted her daughter's hair. "Just checking the garage floor, don't worry." But inside, she knew she couldn't hide it forever. Clara decided to try. She pried hard at a concrete section near the crack with her hammer. After a few blows, the cement broke away, revealing a metal ring embedded in the floor, a round, old lock. She started, shivering from the cold and the truth before her eyes. It wasn't a meaningless crack. It was a door. She tested each key from the tin box. Most didn't fit, until a rusty one with the small circular symbol slid in perfectly. Clara turned it. A dry, weighty click sounded, like time itself snapping. The wall and floor trembled lightly, and a concrete section slowly sank back, revealing a black stone stairway plunging into darkness. Cold air rushed up, carrying the smell of old leather, oil, and the dust of years. Evelyn gave a small cry and pressed close to her mother. Clara held her, both staring silently at the darkness like the edge of a pit. In that moment, Clara hesitated. If she went down, she might find something dangerous, or nothing but a rotten cellar. But if she walked away, she would forever be haunted by the question, what was down there? She turned on another flashlight and gripped the rusty handrail. The stone steps were slick underfoot, cold as ice. Evelyn was kept at the opening, her anxious eyes following. "Wait for me here." "Don't come down," Clara said, her voice firm. The darkness swallowed her shape. With each step, her heartbeat pounded. The musty smell grew thicker. Suddenly, her foot slipped and she almost fell. The beam wobbled, sweeping across a wall and revealing faint markings, red paint arrows. Clara inhaled sharply and told herself to keep going. At last, she reached the final step. The space opened up abruptly, vast and silent. When her light swept across it, Clara froze. In front of her, large shapes draped in canvas lined up in long rows. The beam skimmed over them, reflecting hints of metallic curves beneath dusty covers. A faint sound rang out, like metal knocking against metal in the distance. Clara flinched, swinging the flashlight toward it, but saw only a deep well of darkness. Her heart hammered, sweat broke across her skin. She understood. There wasn't just a secret here. There was a thrum of suspense, as if she had stepped into a realm time had tried to conceal. Clara knew her life had just veered onto a different path in that instant, and all the scorn and jeers outside were now only the backdrop for what would be revealed. The beam of the flashlight wavered across the canvas-draped shapes. The space was as vast as an old underground vault, so silent that Clara could hear her heartbeat in her ears. She set her hand on the rough fabric and pulled hard. A blazing red body emerged. The flashlight gleamed off a glassy coat of paint, chrome shining like a mirror. Clara went still. A 1963 Corvette Stingray, an American icon, with perfect lines and a slender split window. Her breath caught in her throat. She couldn't stop. She pulled down the next cover. A 1965 Mustang Fastback, then a Chevrolet Bel Air, a Shelby Cobra, and even a Ford GT40, the legend that once ruled Le Mans. Clara seemed to step through another gilded page of American car culture with each fell sheet. Light washed over dozens of vehicles, lined in two neat rows. A few were European, Ferrari, Porsche, Jaguar, but most were American icons, gleaming like a silent army waiting to roar back to life. They had been impeccably preserved, with no heavy dust. The scent of leather, metal, and old oil mingled, leaving Clara both awestruck and chilled. At the far end of the vault, a heavy wooden desk appeared. On it lay a time-worn, leather-bound ledger. Clara's hands trembled as she opened it. The pages were meticulous. The name of each car, purchase dates, restoration details, and hours of labor recorded. One line jumped out at her, written in a shaky but legible hand. Collection complete. 27 cars. Total valuation, 150 million USD. Keep hidden until someone worthy appears. Clara sank into the wooden chair, heart pounding. The number took her breath away. $150 million. She, a penniless single mother, mocked by the whole town, was now sitting in the middle of a fortune. Tears rose, not for wealth, but from sheer overwhelm. She thought of her father, who rhapsodized about Mustangs and Corvettes, yet never got close to one. Now they stood before her, real and radiant. Clara turned to the final page. A different scrap of paper was tucked inside, the handwriting more hurried. If you're reading this, I'm already gone. I hid this collection for fear that bankruptcy creditors would seize it. These cars aren't just metal. They're the dreams of the people who built America. Don't sell them for money. Let them live to inspire. Clara read the note again and again. Each word struck deep, transforming wonder into duty. She hadn't just found wealth. She had found a legacy. Right then, her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Harper. Still time to sell. I'll pay double what you spent, cash today. Clara looked at the screen, then lifted her gaze, the flashlight sweeping across the glittering rows. Before her lay a choice: sell and change her life instantly, or hold on and face the hardships ahead. She closed her eyes and drew a long breath. Rain drummed on the garage roof above, echoing down into the vault. And Clara understood this wasn't just about money. It was a chance to rewrite her American dream. Not by running, but by standing firm and preserving what deserved to endure. Morning light slipped through the gaps in the tin roof. Clara sat at the old wooden table, Whitaker's ledger spread before her. The final line still rang in her head. Don't sell them for money. Let them live to inspire. She closed her eyes. The choice was painfully clear. Sell to pay debts and buy a home for Evelyn, or hold on and shoulder a responsibility heavier than a mountain. By afternoon, Harper arrived with a lawyer. He dropped a thick folder on the table, his voice smooth. You've got old debt. I can wipe it clean and add a nice sum. Just sign and sell me this garage. Clara met his gaze. You have money. I have a legacy, Harper snorted, leaving a threat behind. When the tax bills hit, you'll think differently. His words only steeled her resolve. She wouldn't let her daughter grow up watching her mother give up something precious under pressure. Evelyn deserved a different story. That courage is also a way to love. Clara got to work. She went to the town council to apply for permits. The headshakes came immediately. A car museum? In Blue Hollow, we can't even afford to fix the roads." Another scoffed, "This isn't Detroit. Who's coming to see old cars?" Clara didn't quit. She tracked down Richie, the old mechanic who used to teach at the trade school. He was skeptical at first, but when Clara showed him the photo of the Corvette Stingray, his eyes lit up. "If those cars are really there, this isn't just a museum. It's America's memory," he whispered. Richie rallied a few old friends, then organized a small fundraiser at the local church. Bit by bit, the community began to move. A group of high schoolers came to clean the garage in exchange for pizza and a chance to see classic cars. After hearing Evelyn talk about the garage, a teacher offered to bring the class to visit. Cracked walls got a fresh coat of paint, weeds were pulled, and warm light spilt over the rusty roll-up door for the first time. The headaches didn't stop. Harper sent a lawyer's warning letter, threatening to sue. Town permits stalled. Some nights Clara sat alone, hands stained with paint, so tired she couldn't lift a pen. But whenever she looked at Evelyn's drawing, Heritage Garage with flags waving, Clara stood back up. She started learning. She read about the Henry Ford Museum and car shows reviving small towns. She wrote a simple plan. The museum wouldn't just display cars. It would offer student repair classes, host weekend fairs, and set up a small diner next door. Not just cars, an experience. One evening, Evelyn brought home a note from school. She had convinced her teacher to bring the whole class to the garage. "I told him this is living history. Not just in books, but right here in our town." Clara hugged her tight, tears welling. In that moment, Clara understood. The museum wasn't just to save a garage. It was to save a generation's belief, and she was no longer alone. Even with Harper waiting outside and the process still long, Clara now had allies, ordinary people willing to place their faith in a shared dream. On opening day, Blue Hollow was livelier than in decades. The red dust road outside the garage was packed with cars from all over. People crowded in, curious. A few remained skeptical, arms crossed at the gate. A banner hung on ropes, hand-scrawled letters reading, "Whitaker Heritage Garage." Inside, Clara wore a clean blue coverall, and every paint stain was scrubbed out. Her hair was tied back. Her face was calm but taut with nerves. Evelyn darted around, clutching her drawings for an impromptu presentation. Volunteers, students, old mechanics, even Mrs. Carter, who once mocked her, set out wooden chairs and wiped down glass. Then, just as the crowd swelled, the garage lights flickered and died. A hush rippled through the room. Harper stood nearby, arms folded, a smirk tugging at his mouth. "Told you this would go nowhere," he muttered, loud enough for a few to hear. Clara drew a steady breath and went to the breaker panel. Her calloused hands moved quickly, checking the breakers and tightening a loose connector. After a sharp click, the lights surged back. The garage glowed a warm gold, washing over the silent fleet like a symphony waiting to begin. Applause broke out. Smiles spread across faces. Harper fell quiet and stepped back, his expression dark. Clara climbed onto a small wooden platform. Her voice carried slow and clear. "I used to be just a single mother trying to fix old cars to make rent. When I bought this place, people called it a graveyard of scrap. They weren't wrong. It was broken. But beneath the cracked concrete, I found not just cars, but a chance to rewrite my American dream." She paused, scanning the crowd. The American dream isn't only about money. It's about standing up, keeping what's worth keeping, and turning what's old into hope for the next generation. These cars aren't only metal and engines. They're memories, stories, reminders that we can rebuild, even when it looks like everything has fallen apart. Applause rolled through the room. Richie, the old mechanic, pushed himself up on his cane, eyes wet. Clara's right. This is living history, and we're lucky someone had the courage to keep it. Heads nodded. Mrs. Carter stepped forward, her voice unsteady. I was wrong to doubt you. Let me help protect this place. Clara smiled and nodded. She knew community change didn't come from a miracle, but from small moments like this, when people chose faith over doubt. A horn sounded. The steel door rose slowly. Light flooded in, and the classic cars stood revealed, paint gleaming like mirrors. Corvettes, Mustangs, Shelbys, Ferraris, a $150 million treasure sparkling before the crowd. Cheers erupted. Children squeezed forward, adults snapped photos, and the elderly quietly wiped tears. Evelyn tugged her mother's hand. Mom, can I tell everyone something? Clara nodded. The girl stepped up, voice clear and bright. This isn't just my mom's garage. It's our town's. One day, we'll tell this story to those who come after us. Laughter bubbled up, followed by a fresh round of applause. At sunset, the sky burned orange. Clara and Evelyn climbed into a vintage Mustang and rolled slowly down Main Street to a chorus of hands clapping. The last light of day glinted on the polished paint, a quiet proof that what looked thrown away could shine again. Dreams that seemed buried, sometimes they're just waiting for someone brave enough to believe. If you believe actual value never disappears, subscribe and share humankind stories to keep this flame burning.